you should be worried. I've got a book, a Bible, and a picture. We'll be here for 45 minutes.
Okay, we'll pass the lollies round.
I picked up this book last week, and I was reading a little section in it, and it sparked up a memory from a few years ago. It's about a chap who had a dreadful thing happen in his life, and he had a meeting with God the Father, Son and Holy Spirit in a personified way. Okay, they're like people. And so he's meeting with the Holy Spirit at this time, and he's been crying. He's really had a dreadful thing happen. And the Holy Spirit is appearing to him as a young Asian woman. So he handed God the Father the gun and his jacket, and she took it with 2 fingers as if it was contaminated. And then, just as she turned to enter the cabin, a small, distinctively Asian woman emerged from behind. "Here, let me take those," her voice sang. Obviously, she'd not meant the coat or the gun, but something else. She was in front of him. This is the man who was in tears. She was in front of him. And in a blink of an eye, she was in front of him in a blink of an eye. He stiffened as he felt something sweep gently across his cheek. And without moving, he looked down. And he could see that she was busy with a fragile crystal bottle and a small brush, like those he'd seen his wife and daughter use for removing makeup. She was gently removing something from his face. Before he could ask, she smiled and whispered, "Mackenzie, we all have things we value enough to collect, don't we?" And his little tin box flashed in front of his mind where he collected valuable things. And she said, "I collect tears." Can I have a picture?
Yeah.
Just after Jonathan was born, so he's 6 now, and just after he was born, when he was about 3 months old and we just moved to the island, he had chronic eczema. And I mean chronic, you can see he's got a bandaged hand, and in many photos of the time he's got really red cheeks, which everyone said, "Oh, he's lovely rosy cheeks," but actually they were red raw. And it was untreatable. The steroid creams didn't work, and he was just covered in sores all over his arms and his legs, and he was bandaged from head to foot, and we kept him wearing baby grows with dungarees maybe over the top so he couldn't scratch himself. So he was just head to foot in bandages, and I was distraught. He was like it for about 18 months, and there was just nothing we could do. And he was a really cheery little boy. No, he doesn't look it in that photo. Some of the other photos we found, he looked really cheery. But he was scratching himself constantly, and we had to manage him constantly, and it was a really, really difficult time for us. And I really struggled with the whole issue of suffering, which when I'd first become a Christian, I'd kind of dealt with in a very theoretical way and thought that I was okay with. And then here was my little boy who'd done nothing, and he was really suffering. I know it doesn't sound like much, eczema doesn't seem like a big thing, but actually he was just covered from head to foot, and it was very difficult for us. We had no real life aside from looking after him. We spent all our evenings, one of us sat holding his hand so he didn't scratch himself to pieces. He went to bed in special baby grows that covered up his hand so that he couldn't scratch, and it was a really hard time for us. And I kind of went a bit nuts, really. I looked for anything that might possibly help him in terms of all sorts of things. So we tried the steroid creams, and we tried the lots of emollients, which we had to use every day anyway, just to make it a little bit better. And that didn't work, and we tried herbal remedies, chickweed cream, we had cranial osteopathy, and then I started with Christian things that, surely if I fasted for 3 days, then he would be healed. I'm not against fasting, I just think the attitude was not right. But, it's easy to get caught up in, if only I can do the right thing, if only I can do the right thing, if I can take the right steps, if I can do what it says somewhere in the Bible, then he will be healed, and that's that.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen. And I found Christians generally to be quite unhelpful, really. A lot of things said to me about healing and stuff really wasn't helpful because he didn't get healed. He was very ill for 18 months, and I struggled with that. And then on the other hand, the Christian fellowship I received from people seemed to me to be God at work. I had a friend who looked after him for a few small moments when she went and picked her children up from school. So she just came and took him away. And that half hour that I got there gave me time to make the dinner. It gave me time to do something, yeah? It gave me time to have a rest. Because he was waking up 10 times a night as well, which you can imagine was kind of very difficult. But one night we were at a family cell group, an all-age house group, and we did different activities. And one of the activities that I did was I arranged for people to have Bible verses on the table, and they made a collage, a picture of one of the Bible verses. But the Bible verse that I used, which I hadn't really come across before, and I still don't know kind of where it came from, was this one, and I made this collage. Okay, you can't see the writing on it anyway. It's from Psalm 56, and it's verse 8, and it says, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle." And that just gave me, it didn't help in that it didn't take me out of the situation, but it just gave me a big sense that God was there in the situation with me. That God was collecting every single tear that I cried. That every tear that I cried was precious to him. That it didn't, in some respects, it almost didn't matter that I was going through the suffering, but that God was in the suffering with me. And I mean, I have found that to be my general experience of God, that God doesn't lift me out of the suffering in a physical way, but that actually he comes there with me. And I found this verse to be so much more helpful than so many other things that were flung at me. And like I say, it wasn't about making me different, it wasn't about making my circumstances different, it was about God caring about every single tear that I wept. And I had that up in my house for a long time, just sort of sat there reminding me. And a couple of years ago I took it down because I realised I didn't need that verse anymore, that I wasn't clinging on to it. But at the time I was going through it, it really comforted me a lot that God was there, counting every single tear that I wept. Okay, and that little verse in the book, that made me think about it again, and I thought, well, maybe somebody else would like to know that God's collecting all the tears you weep.